Greetings from Ukraine. I'm Alex and welcome back to the Computers of Chornobyl series. Well, the device we are going to talk about today is actually not a computer at all, but it is sure for computing purposes, and it's for sure Chernobyl one. So our today's hero is an iconic Soviet cash register called OKA-4401. I believe that many of you who visited the city of Pripyat roamed around the abandoned shops and stores. Some of you look at only through the windows because, entering the buildings now is prohibited. But you surely noticed that rusty devices just laying sometimes on the floors. And I myself remember them very well from my childhood because I spent my childhood in the very beginning of 90s in Kiev. And you can imagine what a shortage on any consumer goods we had back in 1992, for example. So I spent most of my time with my parents in lines, in stores, trying to get something. And I very well remember these machines in actions, used by these cashiers, fully mechanical devices, and they look very complex. And I always wondered how do they work. So we managed to get exactly the same machine fully functional, and today we'll look how does it work. Before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And for those who want much more, join us on Patreon, where you will find much longer version of this video, where we will tell you also how one tiny paper from a shop in Pripyat could reveal a really creepy story about the very last day when the city was still alive. There existed a lot of modifications of these OKA cash registers, and all of them have been produced in a factory called Shotmash in the Russian city of Ryazan. But apart from this, they're actually not Soviet at all. Because the story is that in 1970s, Soviet Union purchased a license from a Swedish company called Sveda, producing exactly the same machines. So what do you see as technically an authorized clone? I'm really interested if we have here people from Sweden who have seen the, let's say, Swedish prototypes of this. Let us know in the comments how did it look like. Based on what I googled, they look at nearly identical in pretty many details. At the first glance, the keyboard looks somehow really complex, but in fact it's very logical, because there are 4 lines of buttons with numbers which you use to enter the amount of transaction from 1 kopek to 99 rubles 99 kopecks. So basically, if you need a 0, you just do not press any button in a particular column. If the price of an item is higher than 99.99, then you can split that to a few transactions, or you need to use a multiplication button you need to hold. When you press it, you basically just unblock a stopper, and the register will continue adding the last entered number to its numeric accumulator. Inside one store could be a few departments for different types of goods. And how it has been working, you'll see very soon in action. So these 4 orange buttons are very important because they allow to select the actual department where sale is made. So typically, the department 1 was for bakery products, and department 4, for instance, that was for alcohol and liqueurs. And actually on our Patreon page you can find an interesting story about the sales of alcohol in Pripyat, because in that time there was a partial prohibition imposed by Gorbachev. And we found one interesting artifact that gave a little bit of light on how it was done back in 1986, shortly before the disaster. However, if the store was really small, it would be considered technically as one single department. So for this kind of stores, there was a special modification with only one orange button. There could be any number on it. There was also a modification for restaurants, and that was interesting because instead of these orange buttons, they had their small locks installed, and each waiter had own key. So basically such an analog of a modern card-based POS terminals. A blue button below is to complete the sale and print a final receipt. And below is a light green button with this diamond icon, which is basically for customer total for all the departments. Below there are two buttons to work with the change. Let's imagine a buyer gives you some cash that is higher than the actual subtotal. So given that this is incoming operation from a point of the cash balance, you have to press the red plus button, meaning you received this money. And then you have to press the green minus button to deduct the subtotal, and this way getting a change you need to give back to your customer. However, the most interesting is that black button is a such rectangle which is a department sale. So a very common situation of that times. You have one common cashier point and you have multiple departments. In each of the department there is our manager. So for example, you come there and say that I want that thing that costs 3 rubles, and they say go and pay for these 3 rubles. Then you go to another one and they say like this item you need is 5 rubles, so go and pay. Then you go to the cashier, you pay per department, in one place. Then you grab separate receipts, and then you go back to these managers and exchange these receipts already to the actual goods you need. A little bit, let's say, over-engineer it, but that how many cases the shopping in a Soviet time looked like. And the last is a separate standalone line of black buttons, which are for security purposes. Well, it could be with the numbers like here or with letters. And every day a code digit or a letter has been assigned, and only the store staff would know which one. So when something really expensive is billed, this code would be added to a receipt to be checked by the department manager. So if it would not match, then receipt is probably fake. So that's just to avoid any, fake sales or getting the stuff you didn't pay for. The cash box has 5 compartments for bills and 5 for coins. Actually, if you lift a little bit the cash register, you can use one hidden trigger on the bottom that allows to open it without doing anything. So that's, let's say, such a little bit undocumented feature which was eventually very frequently used. Well, I must say that in the Soviet Union they had pretty interesting denominations of money, and the greater valued bills, they were normally stored in a very last compartment or just under the tray. And needless to say that some of my family members who lived most of their life in the Soviet Union never actually have seen in their hands 100 rubles bill. So that rare it was. But all of that is nothing to how impressive this machine really looks like if we remove the upper cover. Because all this big functionality is fully mechanical, and the machine of course has a built-in electric motor. However, this one has little trouble with just one power gear, so it will work incorrectly if it will be powered up. So therefore we will use a backup rotary handle, which normally was intended for the cases of power loss. The machine uses 2 tapes that get slightly rolled on every operation, so there are such 2 printing mechanisms as well. And a larger roll of tape is for customer receipts, and a smaller one is for accounting records. And you can see it normally only through this special window. This is how the receipt looks like. We unfortunately had a dry tape, and that's why it's not really readable. But what is interesting that the date to be printed on each receipt is being set up with this also mechanical rotary calendar. And the year is defined by only one single digit. So for instance, 26th of April 1986 would be 2646. Sorry for interruption, just suddenly came our little multi-povey engineer, Fuzik, say hello. You know, he's a little bit shy, so please write us in the comments how awesome he is. And by the way, on our channel you can find a video about the review of the companion device to our cash register. That's Soviet Dina weighing scales based on Nixie tubes. And using that device, we determined that our engineer is already 5 kilograms heavy. You know, tuna food donated by our patrons on our Patreon page is very helping him. So maybe you should consider joining us out there. And now let's try some typical operations. Here we will try to make few sales using this machine. So before all, we need to unlock it as if it would come to actual cashier workplace. So we insert the operator's key and turn it counterclockwise. Then, to make the simple sale, we need to enter the amount and press the orange key of the department. I don't know, let it be the very first one. Then we turn the handle twice, and like this we have it to do it after every operation. Then a number of the department and the amount will appear on seller's and customer displays. In our case it's 24 kopecks. Now let's add something for 15 kopecks. Then we need to press a customer total diamond button, so machine will sum everything and display that. And finally, we press this blue asterisk button and print the receipt. So basically, that's how you do it if the buyer pays the exact amount and for one single department. Okay, let's try to calculate some change. So let's have some item for, say, 3 rubles 64, and then to the same department we add another item for 125. Now, in the similar way, we get the customer total, which is 489. And imagine we get a 5 rubles bill from the customer, yeah? As it is incoming transaction, we press the red plus button and enter that 5 rubles. And then we press the green minus button, we get the change and a receipt. We can also press the blue asterisk to get one more final receipt. And now let's imagine that the most complex scenario where we need to buy various items from various departments and we have only one common cashier. So let's add 24 kopecks to the first department, then 15 kopecks to the same department, and then we press the black button to get the total for this very department. The register doesn't have a separate accumulator for that, so here will be zeros on display. It has only gross total one accumulator, so the numbers will be added only there. And then we add 1.25 to, say, a second department and get the second receipt in the same way. And notice the machine does not cut these receipts off completely, so eventually you will be able to grab them all together with the final one. And then we press a diamond button and get a subtotal for all the items from all the departments together, which in our case is 164. Then say buyer gives us 2 rubles, so we enter that using the red plus button, which you already know. Then we press a green minus button and get our change. In this time, our entire package of the receipts will be cut and you can pick them. So that's it for today. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to join us on our Patreon, where you can find a lot of interesting details about this very hardware, about other from a series of Computers of Chornobyl, and as well various insights about the Chernobyl zone. See you next time.